rising, everyone. We trust all doing well. So today we are looking at God and the churches and why we even have different denominations, all claiming they're under that same God. Or do Christians really have different gods and they are not telling us, or we don't know? Because for me, per se, I grew up, my grandmother had a church, but I didn't grow up with them, so I didn't get to be so much for that church. And then where I grew up from, I remember the first or earliest churches I started from was the Catholic Church, because there was this young lady who'd always be going there, and so she was like, yeah, I should just follow her. And so also the Catholic Church, we moved from that location. I moved through a few other churches. So eventually I settled with a Pentecostal church. So that was where I was. So my awakening started, and then I moved out of church. But one thing I would say I noticed with all these churches is that one way or the other, they had doctrines or ways of practices that was always or slightly different from the other church. Well, maybe that someone would say that it's because we are human and humans have diversity. So you can't find two churches practicing the same thing, even if it's of the same denomination. Let's say Pentecost, you move from place to place and then you see different things. I remember one thing that was striking for me in the Pentecostal church I was in was, by the time I'd reached adulthood, I know most of the rules and regulations in the church, like if you're a young woman, you're not supposed to be wearing trousers, not even at home, let alone bring it to church. No excessive makeups, no foreign hair, so many rules and regulations. You have to be paying your tithes, you have to be in church around this time, you have to come for evening service. I remember there were even times they would give awards to people who would come to church, do all evening services also till Sunday, and people who are very punctual in church. And this shows that church is just a human institution, and just like any business, or like say a corporation or entity, organization that would want to reward its hard-working, whether staff or customers, whatever it is, because to the pastor, the church members were just sheep. And of course, when a sheep is behaving well, you give it more grass, So yeah, all those things were meant to induce some interest in the church members in relation to church activities and all that. So now and one thing I also noticed that was striking, I think I've already said that there were different doctrines and practices in all these churches. Let's even take tithe, for instance. In some churches, maybe they are taking 10% off your gross salary. That's the total. So even before taxes and all those things will come in, some churches will tell you pay gross, because it is God who gave you all the salary. So why should you take out all your own deductions before you come and pay tithes? And see, it doesn't matter whether you pay loan, you have like bills and all other things to pay. You have to pay gross tithe. There are some places it's more like, okay, just pay net, because after all, before the money comes to you, the government would have taken the taxes. If you owe here and there, they would have taken their money. So just pay the little you have. For some churches too, they don't even worry church members about tithe. They just do their preaching very well. That's laying the foundation. So probably you have people, I've heard testimonies of seeing testimonies like, may I pay 30% tithe, 40%. If you don't have bills to pay, and people to take care of and dependents, then you have nothing to lose if you are paying like 40% tithes. Some even say like 90%. Of course, if the government is buying fuel and giving you allowances and all that, so that you don't even have to touch your own salary, then what's the use of your salary, let alone think about tithes? You get it? And so all these things were going on. And even for the Pentecostal church I was in, as at the time I was leaving, I realized the kind of doctrines we learned when we were younger. By the time I was in my adulthood, most of them had changed. Now you even have pastors' wives who would wear trousers to church. They wear excessive makeups. Some are even beauty therapists and fashionistas and all those things. So the point is, if God is one, and I feel the need for me to do this video is because Christians have chastised especially traditional people for so long. And when it comes to God, I don't even like debating, especially with Christians, because they just have that retarded mindset that God is supreme, he lives in the sky, you don't blaspheme against God. And so people come to your post to insult you and all that. Ask your pastors, how come that same one God, when you move from church to church, your doctrines and sets are different? And I don't know, but as far as I'm concerned, I never got the right answers from church. And that's not to say it's the reason why I left church, but the truth is there's nothing in church. For me, it's just a social club. People just go there to meet friends, socialize, because when you have a wedding or ceremony, funeral, you always have friends and family to follow you around, because the Ghanaians are used to crowd. But when it comes to traditional people and we say our God is not the one people ascribe to in the Bible, then it kind of looks so offensive to them. They are raining curses and insults at us. But yes, still, from church to church, you realize that you people are practicing very different things. Does it mean God himself is so diverse? If he is, then you should be able to understand that not everybody would ascribe to your kind of God like it is in the Bible. You're all looking up to that same God through Jesus Christ. Yes, so from church to church, people are doing different things. In some churches nowadays, it's even common. They sing so-called worldly songs. Like those days, they used to say any song that doesn't have the word Jesus in it or God was considered a worldly song, and we're not even supposed to sing them. So you're at home, some song is humming through your ears from maybe a neighbor's ghetto blaster or something, and you're already feeling guilty within you because I'm a child of God. I should never listen to those songs. To hell with whatever you consider worldly song. All songs are songs. It is we human beings that have given them category. This is gospel, this is worldly. But go to Songs of Solomon. Then I think that whole part of the Bible should be stripped out, because all those things there, I remember the first time I read it, I was quite young, but it gives you some exciting libido, because it's almost like porn is being acted in the Bible. This really goes to show that there's no one God. God is very diverse. And when it even comes to God, I don't really like using the English words so much, because God, per what they gave us through church, is the one that is in the Bible. Later on, as I went online researching and all that, I'll even see people say God stands for gold, oil, and diamond. And as far as we know, these are the natural resources in Africa that has torn Africa apart when it comes to its relationship with Europe and the Americas and all that, because all our colonial masters came to do was to loot all these natural resources and leave us with nothing but the word God. So they tell us, don't lay up your foundations or treasures in the earth where moth and whatever will eat them, but lay up your treasures in heaven. So these our colonial rulers up to now take our gold, natural resource, and that is why Ashanti or Boise is the way it is now, because they have brainwashed us. They told us, don't look at the earth. When you die and go to heaven one day, you are going to walk on the streets of gold. So people are foolishly looking forward to the day they die. Unfortunately, most of us don't see money. We don't see treasures. We don't see wealth. But look at your pastors. They live in mansions. They drive cars, they wear mirror shoes, they change their clothing all the time, because they realize that doctrine the colonial master gave to us, so he could loot everything we have, is false, and it's high time they are smart. Unfortunately, they won't tell you to be smart. It's just a few pastors who will tell you the truth. Even with that, they are guarding it so much, because they know the day the African man becomes wise, he will leave the churches, and these pastors will not have anything to rely on. So it is up to you now to find your own God. This is not a message to convince you to leave church. If you want to go to church, if you want to come and insult me, that's up to you. But for me, I'm so glad I left church. I found God, and God is me as I'm sitting here. Because if we start debating about God now, nobody can show me where God is, except for the fact that they told us God lives in the sky, pointing to the sky. Meanwhile, when we look up there, all we see is the clouds, the ones in a while an aeroplane passes through the air. So be wise, be smart, learn to live for yourself, and peace to us all.